Okay, I got a TCM guy, Texas Chainsaw Massacre guy, and he's on. I got a 245A right here and a 306A right here. I'm not trying to get into the debate, but Gunnar Hansen wrote a book that didn't play Leatherface. Wrote a book, and in the book he said that it was a 306 with the tank, handle, and muffler off a 245A. That's what it says in his book. Now, whether or not he was telling the truth or he just made it up or a fan told him that and he just said, okay, yep, you's right. That's what I'll use. I don't know. I'm not here to debate that, but that's what he said. It was, so that's what I'm going to make for the guy. That's what he wants. I like to clean these screws out, the bolts out, because they get trash and crap in them and they strip real easy. Be real careful not to strip these and have a good wide screwdriver. I don't know how good you can see this. And it's barely, but good wide screwdriver to fit in there. Yeah. Just crack it loose and leave it there. Same thing on this one. This is already pretty clean. I'm pushing down real hard, so you don't want to strip that bolt right there. Crack it loose on both of them, and now we will start to work on the handle. First, you gotta get the right tools. Yeah, I should have cleaned my tools up, got everything situated before I started. Somebody's got different size. Looks like about maybe a 14. Yeah. Take your clutch covers off and set them to the side. Now you can get to that bolt. Yeah, I think it's a 10. I don't have. Tis a 7/16, duh. And it's already loose. Ooh, and that's them on the bottom, that's them little 5/16 or whatever, they're little tiny bolts that love to strip. Yeah, 5/16. And they love to strip. So what I like to do on them is get a good, you don't want to use one of these 12-point wrenches. You get a 6-point socket usually. Am I saying 6-point socket. It's only got 6 sides in it instead of 12. You know, just clean the bugs out of it first, of course. But that way it's got less chance of stripping. And I'm just repeating the same process on the 306. Taking the nuts loose, or the bolts loose, to get the handle off. Now I got the handles loose, and I got the tanks loose. You gotta be real careful when taking these off, because there's a cork gasket under here. Okay, this time it stayed in the lid. But sometimes when you take that off, it's trying to do it right here. It'll stick to it, and if you just pull it off, you might break that gasket right there, and then you'll be in a world of trouble. Well, not a world of trouble, but you might have to replace it anyways. You look it over real good and see if it needs changed. This one looks pretty good, but this one I'm gonna have to clean out. I'm gonna take some probably brake cleaner, either brake cleaner or carburetor cleaner, and spray in there, and then wipe it down and spray some more, and then use compressed air to clean that out, and then just swap the tanks. Put the 245 tank, and swap the air filter covers. Put the 245 over onto the 306. And then we'll have ourselves and then put the handle back on. And then we'll have ourselves a saw like Leatherface said it was. Okay, and just in case this helps someone in the future, I put this on there and it was leaking, so I bought another gasket, and it was leaking too. I thought the gasket was bad, so I got another gasket and put it on there, and it was leaking too. So I was like, okay, there's something going on besides that. Well, what it was is this thing on the inside of that one, where that screw goes right here, was a little too long. And when you put it up against that, and that post on the inside of here was touching that post, it was too tall, and it was letting it through. So I took where's my file at? Just took a file and hit that a couple of times on this one, and now it don't leak. As you can see, it's not leaking anymore. So if anybody has that problem, you just hit that with a file a couple times, and it'll allow this to suck down closer to it when you tighten it down and hit that gasket right so where it won't leak. And on this, I've got another thing is, I believe I'm gonna have to rebuild this carburetor, but sometimes you can rebuild the carburetor and it still won't work. Like, what's going on? Well, these fuel lines that was in here, they were awesome. They lasted forever, but eventually they start breaking down and they'll jam up. Stuff will get inside of here, right here, or inside of that. I've had that happen before too, where you have to take like a little pin, some kind of piece of metal, and jam it through there and get that stuff out where it can suck gas through. So I'll put a new fuel line on here, and to make sure that gas can come through it, I'm going to take this carburetor off and rebuild it, and make sure that gas can get through that elbow right there too. And I've had a couple people ask me about this, and I don't know of an easier way. It's kind of a pain, but you take a 10mm, and this one's real slow, and you just have to that's the best way to do it. You just keep going and going. It takes a while, but that's the only way I know of to get to that one. And once you get that fuel line off, you straighten that out where you can pull the choke lever off of that lever, get them bolts loosened up all the way out. Then you take a flathead screwdriver, and you notice where that idle screw is at. It's pointed that way at like 10 o'clock. And you count how many turns you turn it back out. So it'll be 1. There's 1. 3. Count how many it goes out, and that's what you put it back in when you put it back in. While you've got that off, you should clean all that stuff out of the bottom of it, and you have to scrape that stuff off of there. Be careful, don't ding it, because you can cut that metal real easy. But scrape all this off, and if you ding it, you have to sand it back and get it flat again. You gotta get all that gasket off too. It needs a new gasket or it'll never run right. There's a bunch of videos on how to rebuild a carburetor, so I won't bore you with that. But these 306s and 245s are, that fuel line they use are bad for that right there, that elbow clogging up. So when you're doing it, while you got it apart, just make sure that you can breathe through there and it comes through there easily and it ain't stopped up, and that'll save you some time if it is. When you get to the fuel pump, sometimes you can get away with just taking the fuel pump off and leaving the gasket on there, or sometimes like this time the gasket came off, but you have to get all that crap off. You have to get all that off. If you don't, it'll leak. So you have to make sure all this is clean before you put it back together. Okay, so I loosened all the crap up down there, but then didn't blow it out until I got the carburetor back on and where I could pull the choke so everything's closed off. Then blow it out. Put a new fuel line on it, and make sure that you can blow through this, because sometimes that gets stopped up too. Make sure you can blow through that before you hook the fuel line up. Now's the time for the tests. I'll prime it so it makes it a lot easier to get the fuel going. I also put a handle on it too, trigger on it too. That other trigger was broken, so I had to took the trigger off that other Dayton 306 I had. That's a little tricky to do that. You got to push that, beat that pin out right there, and then you get to get the trigger out. I see the fuel coming in the fuel line right there. So now we can choke it. And it'll start in a couple pulls. I bet you it'll work. Really good. Also, I don't know if you've seen right there, but it was running a little lean. I gave it just a little bit more gas on the low end, and also I'm going to raise the idle up just a little bit. I mean, you have to make tiny little adjustments like that once you take the carburetor off and stuff. But she's running good. Now we just got to put the handle back on, and she'll be ready to go. And there she is. It's a 306 with a 245 tank and handle. The handle is just a very little bit bigger than the one on the 306. So if you put that tank on, the handle will not fit. So you have to put the tank and the handle on it. And it already had the right muffler on it, so I didn't have to change that. I did put a trigger on it because the trigger was broke. And cleaned her up. She's ready to go. I believe that's the right bar. 17 from the bar nuts to the end of the bar. Chain is old, but it's there. All right.